I'm back again, y'all. Uh, hmm. I was just sitting here thinking, and about this so-called migrant crisis, right? The migrant crisis. What does that really mean? What does that really mean? The migrant crisis. Are they talking about immigrants or are they talking about migrants? Because according to how in the United States legislators describe migrants and immigrants, they say it's a difference. They say a migrant is someone who travels from place to place looking for uh, work and a place to live, whereas an immigrant is someone who travels to a different country looking for work and a place to live. I don't get it. Migrant, immigrant. Obviously, the word migrant is within the word immigrant. So in any event, I don't even want to get caught up in the wording of it. I want to talk about this so-called crisis. Because we have some of our own people, Asiatic people, people of darker hue, that totally disagrees with the United States allowing these so-called immigrants over here. The big argument right now is amongst so many people in America is that the government is allowing these migrants or immigrants over here and allocating all of this money to take care of these immigrants. But yet we have homelessness in America that rivals many other countries. I guess it's just my view and my opinion that when we speak of it's always funny to me that America talks about immigrants and etc. America is the home of immigrants. Most of the people in the legislature are immigrants. Their family are immigrants, right? So in my mind, this is how I think. I say, well, it was all right when you and your family came over here. It was all right. But now it's not all right for other people who's running for their lives, who's trying to preserve their children's life, their family lives. It's not all right for them to come over here and seek opportunity to take care of their family. Don't get me wrong. I understand both sides. They just because I understand both sides don't mean that I agree with either side. But what I am saying is that knowing that America is the land of immigrants, I'll say America is the land of immigrants. How then, or should I say, how dare America demonize people who are running scared for their lives? Some of these people are running scared for their lives because their countries are in turmoil. Countries are at war. Children are dying. Some of these people are running because they just want to live. They just want to live. And, you know, so it brought me to the idea that just what if we looked at this whole situation from both angles? That means that we look at it as saying we have migrants or immigrants, or however the United States government want to term it. We have a lot of these brothers and sisters entering the country, and it takes a lot of funding. It takes a lot of funding. It takes a lot of funding to help these migrants, right? Or these immigrants. Because like New York City mayor, New York City, Chicago, Denver, and Texas, their mayors asked for a lot of more federal funding to help these migrants, right? They asked for federal funding to help these migrants. Somebody said that I'm wrong. He said, because do I realize that 90% of the migrants or immigrants are single men? He said, you're wrong on this. Sir, I will say this to you. I didn't take a stance on either way. I am giving theories, hypotheticals. I said, what if? So I ask that you please share out my feed as well. I ask that you please share out my feed. Now, the reason why it's like I'm playing both sides right now. I'm just trying to conceptualize how the government, the United States government, is demonizing anyone. I don't care if they're a migrant. I don't care what they are. The way that the American government is demonizing these migrants or immigrants, what they're doing, in my opinion, is they're trying to pit us against the migrants or immigrants. They're trying to pit us against one another. And as they say, we've been hoodwinked and bamboozled before, and it worked. They're trying to do it again. They're trying to do this again to us, hoodwink and bamboozle us. They want to pit us against these foreign people coming from a foreign land seeking opportunity for whatever reason. Now, don't get me wrong. We know that it's bad apples in every tree. We know that it's bad apples in every tree. And to the community that I come from, the urban community, it's a lot of us who are upset with the government providing services for non-American citizens. It's a lot of us who are upset, and we have every reason to be upset, because here it is, we're struggling to live at this high cost of living in America as an already impoverished people, as an already displaced and misplaced people, as an already miseducated, diseducated, and uneducated people, because the school system does not educate us to the same level that they educate the people on the lighter side of town. Our housing arrangements, there was never in a Caucasian neighborhood a place known as the projects. So when the people of urban communities began to get upset at the government funding, providing federal funds to help migrants, we have every reason to be upset. But we also understand that it's not so much that we're upset at the migrants at all. We're not upset at the migrants at all. We're upset at the government because the government, this is how they play the game with us. They will complain about migrants coming into the country. Then they will fund these migrants as a slap in the face of the homeless in the United States, as a slap in the face of the impoverished in the United States, as a slap in the face of the displaced, misplaced, uneducated, miseducated, and diseducated, misinformed individuals, often of the minority race. They will do all of this as a slap in our face. So now we can have an issue with these brothers and sisters, and I say brothers and sisters, who come over here as so-called migrants or immigrants. Trick no good. Trick no good. They want to pit us against one another. They want to pit us against one another. They want us to see these, they want us to believe that these migrants, who they cannot stop from coming over here. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't be here or that they should stop them or anything. I'm not going there. The point that I'm making is that they want us to believe, they want to indoctrinate us to believe that these migrants who should not be over here is taking away all the money that would otherwise be allocated to treat homelessness, to treat the poor. We don't believe that garbage. We don't believe that garbage. The government set this up to go the way that it's going. The car only goes down the road that it was meant to go down. It was meant to go down that road. And the car that the government is driving right now is causing that wedge, or trying to cause that wedge between the impoverished and the so-called immigrant. We're not going to buy into it. I do understand that the migrants coming over here or the immigrants coming over here is causing state governments to have to ramp up certain security measures, certain social resources. I definitely understand that. And I stand with all the minorities over here who have a disagreement with that. I do stand with my minority brothers and sisters who have a disagreement with that, because I understand when you're sitting up here and you got a child that you trying to raise, might be a single parent, mother or father, and you're already struggling. You barely can really get a job, a good job to help take care of you because the cost of living is so high. And then you have this migrant or immigrant who comes over here, and because they have a law in place, the EGO Act, whereas they say the EGO Act is equal access to green cards and legal employment. That's the EGO Act. So now these people who come over here, immigrants come over here and they get these jobs before we get the jobs, and we've been here working our tails off for years. I don't want to refer to it as an invasion. See, an invasion to me, let's get into that. An invasion to me, someone said that it's just an invasion. That's all it is, an invasion. That's what it is. I don't agree with this being an invasion. I don't agree with this being an invasion. I'm going to tell you why. Because an invasion is what the Europeans did to the Africans on that African soil. That was an invasion. They went in there and they invaded, forced themselves onto a space, a soil, a turf, a land that they had no right to be on. That was an invasion. When you're in the bathroom and someone walks in on you in the bathroom, that's invading your privacy, because that's your privacy. Excuse me. So I don't want to refer to this as an invasion, and that's what the government want us to do, refer to this as an invasion, because when we start thinking of words like invasion, we start thinking that these people are invading our space. Come on, y'all. So we're going to forget, we're just going to forget about those millions and millions of Africans who was invaded and unalived by the Caucasian when they committed the most atrocious act in the history of man. That was an invasion. To say that some people who are trying to find an opportunity to live, in many cases just to live, and provide for their family, and they're coming into a country illegally, or however the government wants to term it, to say that they're invading, I think that's reaching. I think that's really reaching. I don't see them as anyone who is trying to invade anything. I see some people that, for whatever reason, I mean, literally, for whatever reason, they are they're seeking opportunity. Who don't want an opportunity to live? Who don't want an opportunity to raise their child? Freedom is not free. It comes at a healthy cost. I know that to be true. I know that to be true. In the spirit of Black History Month, let me say I know that to be true, that freedom is not free. It comes at a healthy cost, because in Africa, we were free. We were indoctrinated and made to believe that we were not free, and that the land of free was over here. And so when they began to kidnap us, they invaded our space and began to kidnap us. They made us believe that you can be free, but you have to do this, this, and that. Dehumanize yourself. You have to think in a manner that is not beneficial for the whole of your people, but for yourself. It's called divide and conquer. It's not about anyone else, it's about you. It's called divide and conquer. And so now, when I see these brothers and sisters who are trying to make it to the land of milk and honey, I cannot blame them. I cannot blame them, because I know what it's like. I know what it's like to not have food on the table, to not know where your next meal is coming from, to not have a house to live, to lay your head at, not have a bed, not have a couch, not have windows on the house, not have running water, not have heat. I know how it feels. I desperately look for a place to live. I broke into houses. Well, not houses, apartments. And I went and lived in the basement of apartments where the dryers were running because that's where the heat was. But I did that out of desperation. So I can imagine what's going on in the minds of so many of these brothers and sisters who have been labeled immigrants, who have been labeled migrants, who have been described as invaders. Someone asked a question. Someone asked the question, why are they always denying Haitians? And you know, it's funny that someone brought that up, because I was going to go there and I was going to talk about how the United States, the only time there's a crisis that the United States described the incident as a crisis. And I want y'all to look this up, because I had to look it up myself, because I always thought it, but I wasn't founded on it. But now I can say this. I can say this with certainty and with foundation, that as soon as the Haitians, Dominicans, Cubans, Ecuadorians, all of these people from the Caribbean islands, all of these people from these places, when they flood the U.S., Mexico, when they flood the U.S., the government want to call it a crisis. The government want to call it a crisis. But as soon as people are trying to escape a European country that may be at war or whatever, when people of lighter skin are trying to escape, the key word is escape. And please don't mistake me, because I have no problem with a person trying to escape certain unaliveness. But as soon as people are trying to escape a European country, guess what the American government does? You can always come to us. Come to us, my sister. Come to us, my brother. It's never going to be an issue. It's never going to be an issue when those, they don't even call them migrants. They don't even call them immigrants. The only time that we hear of migrants or immigrants and associated with the word crisis is when it involved people of darker hue. When it involved people of darker hue. With melatonin in their skin, huh? So why is that? So now, in the spirit of Black History Month, I want to ask the question, is it a crisis or is it people crying out for help? Is it a crisis or is it people crying out for help? Because when I was young and my mother was engaged in her drug addiction and my father was addicted to drugs and my aunts and uncles and so on and so forth, and I was so desperate, I was hungry. I needed clothes on my back and not the same dirty clothes that I wore every single day. I did things out of desperation to preserve myself rather. As I said, I broke into apartment buildings at night to sleep in the basement where the dryers were running at because that's where the heat was at. And I would take people's blankets and stuff out the dryers and stuff, and I would sleep on their blankets. That's desperation. So now I look at what's going on today, and people are trying to escape. People are trying to escape corruption. They're trying to escape being sexually overtaken. They're trying to escape being unalived. They're trying to preserve the life of their children. They're trying to preserve the life of their family. How dare us demonize them? No one that looks like me, maybe a little bit darker than me, you still look like me. No one that looks like me should act like we don't understand. I said no one that looks like me should act like we don't understand. Because we understand all too well. And that's why the government wants to draw a wedge between us who understand and who can stand with these individuals. They want to draw that wedge. And so what they do is they throw money at the situation to draw the wedge, because then we'll say, well, how are y'all going to fund them? But y'all ain't even looking out for us. So now it will create a division between us and them. The brothers say, we can't go to their country and use their resources. Well, I'm going to tell you like this, my brother. It's a reason why they are trying to escape their country. So it's like when you're in the movie theater and somebody yells fire and everybody runs out, you don't run in. So if everybody's trying to run out, escape that particular country for whatever reason, why would I even want to go in at the time? I want to wait till the smoke clear. I don't want to go in because I might not make it back out. And so somebody just said that you can go anytime you get ready, but you might not make it back out. Just what I said. So what I'm saying is this here. We can't turn a blind eye to people going through their traumas, because we, people who look like me and sympathizers with people who look like me, we understand what trauma is. We understand what trauma is to the point that just thinking about it is traumatizing. When I think of all of the hundreds and thousands of children per year, that's trying to get into the United States, how in the world could I ever not understand their plight when I was that same child in America? I was that same child in America, trying to find a way to live. Trying to find a way to live, man. Said, or they called them refugees. A refugee. Wow. Look at the titles that they bestow upon people who are trying to escape conditions that they foresee will be their demise. Look at the titles that the government put on people who are trying to escape conditions that can end their lives. Look at the titles that the government put on people who are desperately trying to live. Desperately trying to live. Somebody asked me this question. This is fascinating to me. Saeed. Who is Saeed? Let me see. Somebody asked me this question. Somebody, what's up, Saeed? 1 second. Somebody asked me this question, right? All right. Somebody asked me this question. He said, so are you okay with the crime the illegal immigrants are causing? Hey, my question is this here. My question is this here. What happened to all the crimes that we commit? I ain't okay with that. So here we are. Here we are right now. And he's talking about the crime that, am I okay with the crime that these people are committing over here? Shoot, I'm not all right with the crime that we committing over here. We commit domestic terrorist act up in here. Come on, let's talk about that. See, that's our problem. That's our problem right now. We sitting up there acting like we don't understand what these people going through when it's us who committing the crimes over here. That immigrant, that refugee, that migrant didn't tell me to sell that dope. He didn't tell me to sell that dope. I told me to sell that dope. He didn't tell me to pick up that gun. I made the choice to pick up the gun, steal the car, break in the house, rob the lady. I made them choices. Run from the police, commit criminal acts. And that's part of the problem. That's the wedge that the government wants to drive between us and them. They want us to separate ourselves from our own brothers and sisters. They want us to separate ourselves. I'm not separating myself from them people. Them people, my people. They trying to escape. They're trying to look for opportunity. And again, we know it's a whole lot of bad apples in every tree. A whole lot of bad apples. And a lot of them got bad intentions. We know that too. But I'm not going to turn my back on the whole because some have bad intentions. So here we are. And that's, that kind of triggered me right there when the person who chimed in said that, so do I agree, or I'm all right with the crimes being committed by the immigrants? I'm not all right with crimes being committed by anyone, whether they look like you or look like somebody else, anyone. Because I believe that if we truly want to have peace, if we truly want to have peace, then there must be some accountability. And in order to have some accountability, we must have some people who's being responsible, people of integrity, leadership, people who have a heart for other people. Oh, you can have it both ways. Someone said you can't have it both ways. You can have it both ways. We can have peace. It depends on what your idea of peace is. What does peace look like to you? People who don't want us to pay for their feelings. Somebody said peace with who? I'm talking about peace with me. Because I know when I'm peaceful, the people around me gonna feel that. I'm gonna give you a great example. I used to talk about this in prison when I served 28 years in prison. I used to talk about this. If I am peaceful and I am happy, then the people around me are going to feel that energy. They don't have to worry about me robbing them. They don't have to worry about me committing a crime against them. They don't have to worry about me having evil thoughts against them because I'm peaceful. And maybe some of my peacefulness can rub off on them and they can rub off on someone else and so on and so forth. That's how it used to be in our neighborhoods. Somebody said, so it's okay for taxpayers to pay for illegal immigrants when they're struggling themselves. First of all, we need to get out the vote. We need to get out the vote and see where our tax money is going. Because 62 cents off every dollar is going, look it up, towards wars. 62 cents off every dollar. 62 cents off every dollar. Off every American dollar is going toward war. I just had this talk with the presidential candidate the other day. They're paying for Ukraine. 62 cents off every American dollar is going toward war. So you want to talk to taxpayer stuff again? Because they can take just 12% off that 62% and we could end homelessness. Just 12% off that 62% that's going toward war, and we can end homelessness in America. So if you want to talk about with the taxpayer, how the taxpayers are being are funding these immigrants, maybe you should look up your family history, your ancestry. Maybe we should look up our ancestry and our history, and we would maybe better understand who the real immigrants are. who the real immigrants are, who really invaded land, who really stole land, who really pillaged land, who really flooded the land with bloodshed in order to acquire it from indigenous people. Why don't we look that up in the spirit of Black History Month? Look that up. Because then we will have a better understanding of what we're really dealing with. Then we will have a better understanding of what we're really dealing with. Once you know the real history and not something that they want to tell you, then we could really deal with some stuff. But if you don't know the real history of what we're dealing with, what we're up against, then we already bad. It's already bad for us. We have to start learning. We have to start learning what positions we place ourselves in or allow others to place us in. We're dealing with an invasion. You know, it's always interesting to me, you know, because I've spoken to a lot of politicians and things like that. And I've spoken to politicians about certain issues that the politician didn't even know anything about. Literally didn't know anything about. And why am I saying that? Because sometimes we don't know what the hell we talking about. We just heard somebody else say it and it sounded good, so we ride with it. Thus is the case of referring to our brothers and sisters as invaders, refugees, immigrants, migrants. I remember not so long ago, I say this in the spirit of Black history. I remember not so long ago when they said that people that looked like me were not human. We were subhuman. They said that people who looked like me were 3/5 of a human being. In other words, we were not a whole human. I remember that. Do y'all remember that? I'm waiting. See, I noticed that when I go to talking about facts, and when I go to talking about things that the people of African descent have gone through, nobody comments on that. So I'm asking that y'all please share out my feed. Please share out my feed, because I think it's some information that we all need to dialogue on, and some things that people need to know and that I need to know. Teach me as I teach you, and we can grow together. But in the spirit of Black history, I want to call people's remembrance to the slave trade. I want to call people's remembrance to the race of people who invaded African soil, kidnapped African people, pillaged African villages, unalived scores of African people, committed sexual acts against the will of many African women and men and children, chained them up and put them on slave ships. And when a slave ship got too heavy, threw them overboard to be eaten by the sharks. And starved some of them to death while they was laying in chains in awkward positions, and some of them fell ill right in that moment, right next, chained up to someone else, and met their demise in that moment, and that other person had to lay there next to that person who's unalive at the time, and they had to lay there next to that person for days. But it all started with the people who invaded that African land, the demonic thinking. But the fascinating part of that story is that when those invaders brought those African brothers and sisters to these shores, they were sadly surprised that we already recognized these shores. Why did we recognize these shores? Because we already been over here. We are the indigenous people of this land. So those slave masters, slave holders, slave ship runners, they were sadly mistaken when we got off the ships and we recognized the land. Because just look up the history of the land of Africa and see how far it extends. Come on. So in the spirit of Black history, I want us not to forget the trials, the tribulations, and the traumas that people like me faced in being kidnapped and brought over here. When there was peace where I was, we was taken out of peace, a peaceful place, and brought to a place where we were tormented, persecuted, prosecuted, lynched, sexually overpowered, brutalized, demonized, psychologically tortured, physically tortured. Let's not forget none of that. So here we are. We're dealing with an American government who does not favor whatsoever people who look like us flooding America. They don't favor that. Let me ask y'all this. When was the last time you heard an American politician, governor, or government, or president talk about a migrant or immigrant crisis from people from those European lands that was coming over here? So when was the last time you heard that? I'm waiting. Somebody please tell me something. When was the last time you heard the American government label Europeans who came over here to escape the trials and tribulations of their country. When have you heard them label them refugees and migrants and immigrants and call it a crisis? When? I'm waiting. Ukraine, they didn't call it a crisis. They didn't call that a crisis. When those people of Ukraine was coming over here, still coming over here, they don't call that a crisis. They're providing humanitarian aid. That's the way they term that. They're providing humanitarian aid for war-hit countries like Ukraine. Come on, man. Come on, man. They want to provide humanitarian relief for the people of Ukraine that's coming over here. Homestead Acres, huh? Okay. Thank you, man. Thank you very much, Homestead Acres. Thank you for taking your time out to listen to me. That means so much to me, especially coming from you. So, well, I don't know all the immigrant numbers, but I do some research, and this is one of the largest surges of so-called immigrants coming to the United States. This is one of the largest surges at one point. And I do know that approximately 2,200 per day are coming to the United States. I do know that because I did a little bit of research. But again, let me say this here. In the spirit of African history, let us not forget that when we were on these slave plantations over here, for those of us who were found the courage and the strength, we did anything and everything possible to escape those slave plantations. Because we could foresee that had we stayed on those slave plantations, we would continue to be a slave and we possibly could lose our lives to the slaveholders. And so some of us, such as in 1831 with Nat Turner, and prior to that, Denmark Vesey and Gabriel Prosser in 1800, some of them brothers, like Frederick Douglass, some of them brothers found it in them that the strength to escape, because they did not want to be a part of that slave fortress, that slave plantation. They did not want to be considered property. That's the Dred Scott case. They did not want to be considered property, because when you consider property, the owner of that property can do anything with you without consequence or repercussion, because he or she owns you. So, Ronald, Stacy 217, in your lifetime, have you ever seen this many people come across the border? See, the one thing that I learned in my 28 years in prison, one of many things that I learned, let me put it that way, one of many things that I learned during my 28 years in prison is that no matter how illegal it may be, when the government wants to demonize a people, wants to commit to population control, they will do anything in their power to commit to that cause. And they will put whatever amount of money behind it to make it happen. They will do any and everything in their power to commit to population control. The history is fraught with instances of the government committing to population control. If you don't believe me, look up your history. Look up your history. It's right there in your face. They cannot escape it. We cannot escape it. The sad thing about it, though, is that we listen to the news media all the time, and the news media will tell us that it's not happening. This is not happening. They wouldn't do that. They wouldn't do this. Who you think is paying the news media? This is why certain brothers step up, certain sisters step up, and when they go to tell them the truth, they get blackballed. We know what happened to certain brothers: Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, Huey P. Newton, and so many other brothers and sisters who met their demise at the hands of those who could not and did not want to accept the truth. But here we are today. We are swamped in opportunities to find truth, tell truth, live truth, and we run from it. We can't do that. I sit up every single day of my life. I wake up in the morning and try to figure out a way to free somebody. I try to figure out a way to free somebody because I know what it feels like to be encaged. 28 years I was encaged in an American prison. I know what it feels like to be encaged. I know what it feels like to be oppressed. I know what it feels like to have all of your rights stripped from you, the rights that you thought you had. And anyway, I know how that feels. I embrace the opportunity to speak on behalf of those who can't speak for themselves. I embrace it because I can remember when I thought that wasn't nobody speaking for me. So this opportunity for me to be able to speak up on people's behalf who may not be able to speak for themselves, that's great. You know, I met this family. I met many families over the year, but I'm just speaking of one particular family. I met this family, and the little boy, I was growing up, he was growing up. The little boy, he was a few years older than me, and I think he was from Iraq. And he would tell me the story about way back when the war was going on then, way back then too. He was telling me the story of how he was trying to his father had been unalived already, and his mother just wanted him to have an opportunity. right? His mother just wanted him to have an opportunity. And she had family who was over here in America. She contacted her family over here and they took her in. And that little boy right now is an attorney who fights for the freedom of any and everybody whom he could fight for. And he doesn't see skin tone. He doesn't see ethnicity. What he sees is opportunity to allow someone to experience freedom. And that right there is what inspires me every day. That right there is what inspires me every day. That here I am. I served 28 years in a prison in the United States. I studied books throughout my time. I committed myself to helping people. And I've helped so many people. And I truly feel that I haven't helped enough. And so I lend my voice to causes that I feel is important. Every cause is important to someone, but I prioritize certain causes based on the climate and the condition. And when you're talking about immigrants and migrants and refugees and all that type of stuff, I prioritize this because I see the interconnectedness and the relationship between what's going on today and what went on with the African people who was kidnapped and brought over here. I see it. I see the connection. I address it. But I don't want anyone to believe that because I said I see it and understand that connection and that type of thing, that I agree with the way that things are going on. Don't mistake me, because I think that I still say that I think that it's a slap in our face, the people who look like me. It's a slap in our face that the American government will allocate funds to resource people coming over here from other countries when they refuse to resource the impoverished and the homeless that's already living in this country. I think that's a slap in our face. And I agree with everyone who has an issue with that, because I have an issue with that. Let me clarify again. I have an issue with the government, these governors and mayors and the presidents and whoever else is all for seeking or granting federal funds to help these brothers and sisters who are coming from other countries into America. I disagree with the government, but only because I am saying that the government is using this funding as a wedge between the American poor and homeless and the population of those brothers and sisters who are coming over here as refugees, immigrants, and migrants. I don't blame those brothers and sisters who are coming over here. I don't blame them. I don't blame them for being desperate and fighting for their lives, running with their lives, trying to seek a better life for themselves and their family. I don't blame them. I blame the government for not taking care of the poor and homeless here in America, just as they are now taking care of the so-called migrants, immigrants, and refugees coming from other countries. That's what I disagree with. It's the government who draws the wedge. It's the government who creates the conflict. It's the government who creates the dissension between us and them. When we are them, we are them. They are us. What you say, Braids Gaines? Braids Gaines said the government destabilized other countries. That's why migrants run away from their countries. Wow, ain't that so true? Ain't that so true? Every country where the majority of migrants come from, the American government has had their hand in their governance. Look that up. Look that up. Every country where the mass majority of migrants, immigrants, refugees, etc., come from, the American government has their hand in the government of those countries. Raising the cost of living, lowering the cost of living, raising the taxes, lowering the taxes, creating projects as they did in the United States. Again, let me say this again. There is no European or Caucasian area in the United States, period. If you know of one, please tell me. There is no European projects in the United States, but as many Black projects in the United States. There's many Black projects in the United States. Look that up. If I'm wrong, somebody tell me I'm wrong. I don't believe I'm wrong based on my studies and my research. So why do I bring up the projects? Because again, when so-called whites migrate over here from war-torn countries like Ukraine, it's never considered a crisis. They're never considered immigrants. Well, the trailer parks is not projects. Come on, stop it. Trailer parks is not projects. First of all, what does project mean? What does project mean? And I respect what you're saying, don't get me wrong. But I want us to understand why I brought up projects. Because a project is an experiment. Like if you say, I got this project out in my garage. That's something that you messing with, trying to fix, repair, see what you could do with, see what works, see what does not work. It's an experiment, right? So when the so-called blacks was placed into a projects, this wasn't a government experiment. And so what they did is they identified this area as the projects, right? Once they identified this particular area as the projects, now we know where we can drop all the drugs and guns at. Now we could try to box in them because we know once we drop the drugs and guns, crime always follows. So now we can always label this area as a crime-ridden area. And this area is full of blacks. That's why they call it the projects. We're going to give them welfare checks and see how they live off that. The projects. We're going to give them food stamps. Now they got food stamp cards. The projects. All of these governmental assistance programs, they weren't meant to help. They was meant to isolate, pacify, placate, put a veil over your eyes. Natasha, I do respect what you're saying, but we're talking about the inception of that's like saying there's white people in rap now. Yeah, but it wasn't white people then. So it wasn't founded for or by white people. The projects, the idea of the projects was a governmental plan to imprison people, us. So this plan wasn't meant for white people. Eventually, because the overflow of people and when people began to have interracial couples came about, now, obviously, so-called white people are now living in what is now known as projects. But back in the days, you go to Chicago, no. Detroit, no. California, no. Philly, no. First of all, let me tell you something about the Native Americans in the spirit of Black history. We are the Native Americans. Native mean indigenous too, right? Indigenous too, right? That's what native mean. Indigenous too. Indigenous to what? Indigenous to this land. So when you talk about Native Americans, you're talking about people who are indigenous to this land, to this American land. Who are the first people on the planet Earth? Who are the only people that traveled from the beginning to the end of the earth as far as we know it? Who are the nomadic people of the planet Earth? We are the indigenous of this earth. Native, see, that's how they trick us. They talk about Native Americans and American Indians, and that they trick us with these words. Look up the word native. We have to stop getting caught up in their ideology. We have to stop allowing them to indoctrinate us to believe what they want us to believe about us. You can't tell me about me. You don't look like me, walk like me, talk like me, act like me, smell like me. Come on. We got to stop allowing them to tell us who we are, tell us where we came from. That's why they're taking our history out of the history books. So now we can believe anything they say because we can't find it nowhere else. So again, if you look up the word native, that means indigenous too. So when they talk about the indigenous people, aboriginal, I love that. Aboriginal, native and aboriginal. Native and aboriginal. Listen, you just told me to read a law dictionary and you'll know the difference between native and indigenous. Yes, who is the dictionary written by? If I read the dictionary right now, the dictionary tell me that everything black is evil. Am I supposed to believe that? If I read the dictionary right now, matter of fact, if I read the dictionary right now, we can go to the word black and it will show you that all things associated with the word black is evil. But yet we call ourselves black, right? We call ourselves black, right? But yet if we look in a dictionary that was not written by us, we will see that everything associated with the word black is evil. And guess what? Everything associated with the word white is good. So when we call ourselves black, according to their dictionary, when we call ourselves black and we know that they are the opposite of us, we're calling ourselves evil and we're calling them good. Right here it says black, it say of the very darkest color owing to the absence of complete absorption of light. In other words, you don't have no light. The opposite of white. Black, according to science, means death. White means purity. Purity means God. And God means the ruler of the land. So, I think that we need an overhaul of understanding what America does and have done to us. Because all right, here it is right now. Native of a plant or animal of indigenous origin or growth. Of indigenous origin or growth. Now, if we understand, if we use our innate intelligence, right? Because we all have it. We all have a certain innate intelligence. We was born with it. You know, especially, and I'm not discounting my brethren on the other side, my sisters on the other side. I'm talking about us that I know because I understand our history. We was born with a certain intelligence that's beyond the comprehension of man, right? So although we'll read a certain thing, we'll know the truth of it just in reading it. And when we don't know the truth of it, sometimes we'll hold back and become apprehensive to even using it. What does that mean? Excuse me one second. What does that mean? That means that, for example, black and white aren't nationalities. They are legal status classifications. I like that. And why do we call ourselves black then? See, first of all, I'm a Moorish American. That's my nationality, Moorish American. So I'm not black, never was black, although I used to call myself black. So I understand that. It's not a nationality. But if you get 10 people who look like us in a separate soundproof room, and someone told us, while we all together, someone told us that if 5 of you people can give me your nationality, and it's all consistent with at least 5 of the 10 of you, all of you will be free. The first person will say, I'm black. The first person will say I'm Afro-American. The third person will say I'm African-American. The fourth person will say I'm African. The fifth person to say I'm Negro. The sixth person to say I'm colored, and so on and so forth. Excuse me, Moorish American and African American. Moorish American is nationality, sir. Why are we Moorish Americans? Because we are descendants of Moroccans and born in America. Descendants of Moroccans and born in America during the Moroccan Empire. So when the brothers and sisters were kidnapped from Africa, the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa, all of that was a part of the Moroccan Empire. And so when the invaders went and kidnapped those people from the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa, which were the Moroccan Empire, which were the people of this empire were known as Moroccans, they kidnapped these people and brought them over here to America. The people who are now born over here in America are now known as Moorish American because we are descendants of Moroccans and born in America. All right, y'all. Multi-ethnic, I respect that. You know, that to each his own. But the point that I'm making is this here. I don't want us to be looking at this at the so-called migrants, immigrants, refugees from the lens of the American government. They want us to blame these people for fearing for their lives. They want us to blame these people for fearing for their lives and running for their lives, trying to escape. Some of these people are leaving with only the clothes on their back. You think anybody want to leave a place like with only the clothes on their back? So, all right. Indigenous German, okay. So no one wants to leave their homeland with only the clothes on their back. And when someone does that, that's indicative of an act of desperation. And when you're talking about women and children in particular, we must have a softened heart for those children and the mother that's coming with them. A lot of the fathers, we understand that, you know, a lot of the fathers have not, they didn't make it to see the day. Because for whatever reason, whatever was going on back in their home country, you know, they didn't make it to see the day. But for those families that come over here, I'm not mad at them. I'm not mad at them for trying to save their own lives. They're just trying to live. Look out for their family. I'm not mad at them for that. My issue is with the American government. My issue, again, let me clarify. My issue is with the American government because the American government is who is causing the conflict, drawing the wedge between us and them, trying to make it look like we are not them and they are not us. The American government is doing this, want us to hate them. They don't deserve that money. They don't deserve to be helped. They're not even citizens. But why are we mad at them? Because the government is doing something for them. If anybody we should be mad at is the government. And now, what did it say? Apple's applauser says, who housing? Whose jobs are they going to take? But ours, I guess. And don't get me wrong, I agree with y'all on that. But how could you be mad at them? How could you be mad at them for coming to get these American jobs that they know they're going to get, they possibly know they're going to get, but America is the one who's giving it to them? How could you be mad at them for that? We got to go out to vote and put in office those people who represent our needs and our voices. We can't get mad at these people who are coming over here and they getting good jobs and all this type of stuff. How? How do we blame them for opportunities being given to them and not us? How do we blame them for that? They're not the givers of the opportunity. The government is the giver of the opportunity. So you ain't mad at nobody but your ex. All right. So, again, I want us to understand that my gripe is not against these so-called refugees, migrants, immigrants, whatever the government want to call them. I call them people. My gripe is not against these people. My gripe is against the government, because if the government can find $2, $3, $4 billion to help migrants, and we know that they seen this years ahead of time. If the government can come up with $3, $4 billion to help migrants, why can't they help us? Why can't they help the homeless? Why can't they help the homeless that's sleeping on the streets of American cities? Why can't they help the homeless who have nothing to eat? Why can't they help dampen the drug crisis in America, where you have so much video and footage of so many people just lying on the streets and walking on the streets? I mean, totally destroyed by drugs. Why can't they allocate money for that? For 62 cents. I ask that y'all please share out my feed. Please share out my live feed. 62 cents on every single dollar, on every single American dollar is spent on war. Do y'all get that? That's 62 cents of every American dollar. So someone brought up taxes. That's where your taxes is going. 62 cents on every American dollar is being spent on war. So that means that the other 38%, so if 62% of American money is being spent on war, that means 38% is being spent on what? Because we know it ain't ending poverty. We know it ain't ending drug addiction. We know it ain't closing down prisons that shouldn't be built. We know it ain't that. We know it ain't helping out low-income people. We know it ain't that. So where's the other 38% being spent? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I just know where it ain't being spent. But I will say that we have a drug problem in America. We have a crime problem in America. We have a homeless problem in America. We have a housing crisis in America. Where are the $1 billion? Where are the billions of dollars to help end these crises? Where are the billions of dollars for that? We have an education crisis. Absolutely, education crisis. And that's why many people are upset. I don't want us to, excuse me, I don't want us to have misguided anger. Let's not be angry at the people who are coming to America to find opportunity. Let's not be angry at them. Let's not be angry at them, because it makes me think of places like Chicago, where if you have a beating heart and a thinking mind, then you have breath in your body, and therefore I'm sure you know what's going on in Chicago when it comes to violence. It makes me think of all of those families who are losing loved ones at such a rapid pace. And you hear some of their stories, and okay, you in Chicago, so you know. And you hear some of them stories, and it's like those mothers, you rarely hear about the father, because the father may have already met his untimely demise. But you hear the mother talk about, they took my son, and she just want to get away with the other children that she has. She just want to get away. She want to escape. She's in a state of desperation. She just want to get away. She want to see her children grow up. She want to see her children with opportunity. She don't want to see the streets claim another one of her children. Like the one lady that I read about earlier this last year, rather, she lost all 3 of her only children to gun violence in Chicago. And it wasn't at the same time, year after year. So I can imagine those mothers wanting to just get away, wanting to find an opportunity, a place of opportunity, away from what's going on in Chicago. And that's just a microcosm of what we're seeing today. You have people who are trying to get away from not just cities, but countries. They're trying to get away from this. Sorry to hear that, Sean Dyer, man. Say, I am a disabled double leg amputee homeless since last April here in Chicago. I'm supposed to come to Chicago very soon to do some work in Chicago. I do criminal justice reform, criminal and social justice reform work. I'm supposed to be in Chicago very soon. And let me see, Sean Dyer 271. Sean Dyer 271. But I'm just saying, imagine how those mothers feel in Chicago because they were poor and they just couldn't get out. So they had to stay. And then staying, they lost a son or a daughter to violence. And everybody there, it's like how they talk about certain projects in Chicago that no one is welcome at. No one is welcome there. Wow. Wow. That's amazing. No one is welcome there. No one feels comfortable there. And so don't you think that those mothers are trying to get the hell out of there? They trying to get their families to a better place. Don't you think they're trying to get their families to a better place? Because they just want to see, they want to see their children grow up. They want to see their children grow up. Mm. And so now I think of, when I think of this, the people coming over here from the other countries trying to escape sudden demise, trying to escape poverty and homelessness and famine. I think personally, it takes a whole lot of humanity for someone to pick up and head out on faith, not knowing what the future holds for you, but having faith that whatever the future holds for you, you're going to be protected. I think it takes a lot of courage to make that decision to absolutely, you are a survivor, Sean. It takes a lot of courage to do what some of these people are doing. And we can't be mad at them for doing it because they found the courage to do something that so many of us should have been done in our life. So many of us wish that we would have had took our little brother away from that neighborhood before he met his untimely demise. Our little sister. When we was in a neighborhood that was drug and ridden with violence. Some of us wish that we could have moved on from those situations, found greener pastures somewhere. I understand it. Wish that we could have found greener pastures somewhere. But we stayed. And some of us endured some things and overcame some things because we stayed. But some people who stayed did not make it. Because the fear is rich. And that's what we keep overlooking. The fear is rich in us. I agree with what you're saying, JD. JD says, if that's the way it was happening, yes. But they're being paid to get here and paid when they get here. I understand what you're saying, brother. But we cannot be mad at them for what the government is doing. Because the government set everything in play. The government set everything in play. They are just pawns in the game like we pawns in the game. It's all about money. It's money on every single one of our heads right now. Everybody with a social security number is attached to a bank. Driver's license number. Notice that every document that identifies you has a number on it. Every single document has a number on it. That's for a reason. It's money attached to every single number on every single document that we have. We cannot blame these people coming from other countries for the American government giving them the opportunity to have certain work, to have certain housing, to have certain social benefits. We can't blame them for that. If we got a problem with it, guess what we got to do? Guess what we got to do? We got to vote. We got to vote, y'all. We got to get people in office that represents our thoughts, our needs, our wants, our opinions. We got to vote. We have to vet our politicians better. We can't just like him because he looked like us. We can't just like him because of that. I don't like nobody just because they look like me. I like people who understand what I've been through and what my people been through, sympathize with it, and maybe they even been through it, and who is willing to come up with a solution on how to get us out of it. That's the people I like. That's the people I like. Sean said we have to run for office. That's what we doing here in Michigan. It's a lot of guys who came out of prison right now with me, running for office in Michigan. That's what we doing in Michigan. And that's what we need to do as a community of people. The people who are most affected. See, I learned that those closest to the problem are closest to the solution, but furthest from the resources and power. And the reason that we're so far from the resource and power is that we won't come together as a collective body of people and demand certain things. Put our names on ballots. Get people to understand what we stand for and that we stand for what they stand for. That we're fighting for them. But listen, y'all, I'm going to bring this to an end because I got some other things I got to do, and I appreciate everybody for tuning in, sharing out my live feed. And I ask that everybody, this is my only ask. I want us to understand that precinct captain, I was a precinct captain too, man. Ain't that something? I was election protection, canvasser, phone canvasser, text bank canvasser, street team canvasser, all of that. I want all of us to remember this here, man. If you take nothing away from what I am talking about or what I've said, I want you to understand what forgiveness means. I want you to understand what having a heart means. I want you to understand what being woke means. Because once you understand what these things mean, you won't blame the people who are coming over here to America. You'll blame the government, and hopefully you'll do something about it. So I'm going to say peace and love to those within the sound of my voice. And for those who cannot hear the sound of my voice, I say pass along the message because someone needs to be inspired.